So
good morning, Viet America world.
thank God we're in the demilitarized. I can't even say it. Never mind. DMZ. Haha.
Wow.
Bam. Broke that down.
So
welcome back to the Restructured podcast.
It's been a minute. That's what the kids say. That's what the kids all say today. It's been a minute. No, it's been longer than a minute. It's been many minutes, many moons, many nights that we have recorded. It was December, I think, was the last one, and we are kicking off the next season. And we're doing it in a great manner. So we have somebody with us today, a fellow podcaster getting into podcasting. He's done a lot of interviews. We're excited about talking with him, and especially his topic. This hits home to us. I am one of these that he talks about, but I also have some of these. Brother Larry, or Big Hoss Man, also has some of these, and so he is. He may not be one, but he is one.
I am not one. I am not one, but I had some. Yes. Although I will say this, I don't want to give away anything yet, but mine actually didn't grow up that, but they got thrust into it.
You just
later
gave it away.
Well, I did.
You just gave it away.
I did.
That's its
talking about cats.
No, I'm definitely want to talk about cats. Those are. My personal opinion on cats is. Hold on, wait a second. Now you got started. My personal opinion on cats.
There we go.
They're harbingers of demonic spirits. That's why they have 9 lives. Each one at the beginning of their life is host to 9 demonic spirits. So that's why they have 9 lives. So
okay, hold on. I'm going to correct you on that. Okay, because you said it was your opinion.
That's fact.
That is actually fact.
Yeah, that is
fact.
That is
so
science.
That's not...
Okay, that is science.
That's science. we have a German Shepherd. we have a German Shepherd that chases and hates our cat, and I think it's the greatest thing to take our cat and take it off the safe zone and put it off the porch. And it's the funniest thing to watch. That cat gets treated every day. I get so mad at. I'm allergic to cats, so that's great. Anyways, let's get going on the Restructure podcast.
With God's Word as our authority, we, the Restructure podcast, would like to set forth a proposal to God's people, the New Testament church, to become of a Berean nature in pursuit to know the Scriptures. The church in our generation, we believe, has become a distant shadow of what the body of Christ should look like. It will be our endeavor to bring forth things for God's people to think on and consider as they search God's Word to see if these things are so.
Alex.
Yes.
Alex Otto. Doesn't quite ring off the roll off the tongue. Ring off the tongue. Doesn't quite ring off the tongue.
Ring off the tongue.
Like your dad.
Tomato.
I did.
I remember the first time somebody told me that they had a friend whose name was Tom Otto, and I'm like, no, you don't.
He was set up for success.
Otto.
Hi, my name is Tomato.
Is there a Tom Otto there? Tom Otto. Tom Otto? Tomato?
Yes, I would like a tomato, please, to come. All right. So anyways, we have known.
Otto.
Yeah, this is Alex. This is the middle child. And so that's why he has a podcast, because middle children need all the attention. And I'm just kidding. I've known Alex since I think he was about 6, maybe 8. I met him at Camp Victory, and he was thrust onto me not by my choice, because he was in my Bible, my treasure hunt group, and I had to help Alex say verses. And he was a weird kid because he actually enjoyed it. So
I did, and I remember that. One of my first memories of Camp Victory, also with Brother Dusty. I think he was my very first one.
Yep.
Brother Dusty Ray. But my second year, I think, was with you.
We don't condone Brother Dusty Ray on this podcast.
Nope. Rusty day. So now, for those of you that have been to camp and you're like, I don't know who Alex is, which those people don't exist. All right.
Right.
But if you ever go to camp, because I know there are some pastors and churches, I think, that are going to be introduced to camp this year. And I think they listen and are friends with the podcast. If you ever go to camp and you see somebody that is 400 feet tall, that's Alex or another kid. So there's only two people that come that are 400 feet tall. So Alex is the one running around doing stuff. I don't even know if you're going to work at camp this year, but if you are there, you'll see Alex, and it's great. We love Alex. Love his family. So Alex, tell us a little bit about your podcast. Tell us the name and kind of where it has come from. Just whatever you have to say on your heart about it.
Well, the Remnants Seed, which is the name of my podcast, came about from Brother Robbie Morrison and his ministry, and eventually became Brother Ryan Overfelt's ministry, the Heirloom Seed Project. I'm not sure. I know it's been around for years, the thought process, but a retreat where ministry kids could go to just relax, unwind, talk about the issues that come with being a ministry kid.
Yeah, it was a late missionary son that came up with the idea. Brother Scott Hall, he passed away last year. It was his second born, Todd, that came up with it, and talked to Brother Robbie about it. So yeah, it was a very needed thing when it came out. So go ahead. Sorry, I do that.
Fine. You're fine. Well, Brother Ryan Overfelt came through our church one day. First time in our church history, I'm pretty sure, that we took a missionary on for support without any hesitation. That day, that night, we took him on for support. We went to the Heirloom Seed Project. For years we've been going, and it's been the second most influential place for me when it comes to decisions about the Lord, besides Camp Victory. And last year, I got the burden to reach other kids, because the Heirloom Seed Project it's small. It's not designed to reach large bases, to reach the masses. Just the way that it's set up, you can't really fit 80 kids in the mansion. Oh, and by the way, it's in a mansion, which is also incredibly amazing and only possible through God.
Mansion over the hilltop.
But our whole goal is to be able to reach as many ministry kids as possible. I'm not sure of the exact statistic, but what did I say earlier? 30%?
I think so. You referenced that it's about 30% retention for, is it 30% retention or 30% loss? I think it was a retention.
It's one of those, and it's a big difference, but it's one of those. A shocking number of ministry kids, when they turn 18, leave the ministry, leave the church, and never look back. It becomes a part of their past. And our goal is to make that number as small as possible.
So you have done a lot of interviews so far, and you are hopefully in the near future going to be starting to put those out accessible for people to listen to. As you've done these interviews, is there one thing that really, it's probably really difficult to put it down to one thing, but I would imagine there's some things that are in common with each other that ministry kids deal with? Like one thing that you'd say is pretty big, or a couple things that are pretty big, as to maybe what the ministry kids are dealing with that makes them in a different situation than other kids, that maybe makes it difficult to, I don't know, to see these kids through, to see them step and stay with the faith.
In my personal opinion, was affected me and was affecting my brothers and all the people that I've interviewed is being alone. The thought of we're different because we're in the ministry and we can't change that. And it's been pretty common throughout every single ministry kid that I've been able to interview through Camp Victory or just my friends. It's the fact that we know we were raised differently and that it's affected us. And it's almost like we're tricking ourselves into thinking that we can't live a normal life just because we've been in the ministry for so long. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm okay. I was talking to Alex before we started recording about perspective, because see, Jared, it makes sense to Jared because Jared is a preacher's kid. I am not a preacher's kid, and so I'm not real sure what that means. Because now let me just share a perspective and why my perspective is different. I grew up thinking that most PKs were above the rules. And this is not a slight to anyone out there or anyone. This is just what I grew up with. And to most PKs were above the rules, and most of them were, I mean, Satan's spawn. I mean, they were horrible. Now wait a second. Okay, now I know I'm 51 years old. I've seen that that's not the case everywhere. Okay, but I don't understand really what you're saying here, as far as you didn't think that you could live a normal life. Help, I guess, expound on that to try and kind of just help me understand, and someone maybe with a different perspective.
Right. Well, it almost boils back down to that. To what you just said, there's a thought with preachers' kids. When I first went into the workforce, I say the workforce, but it was fast food. That's the only thing people talked about, the fact that my dad was a preacher, and that was the only thing that really made me stood out. So that became my identity.
There you go.
People knew me as the pastor's kid. They knew me as the PK.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm going to stop you for a second, Alex. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to add to what you're saying, for those that are listening. It becomes your identity, and we could say, well, that shouldn't be the case. Well, you're right. But when your identity is not, as a kid, it's not in who you are. There are expectations. There's all kinds of things that are not just thrown on as the normal parent, but there's expectations that naturally come when they find out, oh, your dad's in the ministry. Right. Other kids can do this, but if you do anything that is subpar than what they expect, it's really magnified. I saw that growing up, and that's a huge there is a feeling.
It's the glass house syndrome. You guys feel like you live in a glass house.
Right.
I live in single wide, but no, I know what you mean.
And I said live a normal life. That was pretty drastic of me. It's not necessarily that we're so different because we're ministry kids, but it's almost like people, like you said, point us out to be different. It's the standards that have been just put on ministry kids. It's not really fair. And I feel like that's one of the leading factors to rebellion in ministry households. Because why are these standards being put on me? It's not fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess maybe why I got to see, especially in the 80s, some PKs that were definitely, because I've watched Alex grow up, and I've watched his brothers, and I've watched a lot of the PKs and grow up now for the last 20 years. And I will definitely say this. I've never seen Alex be really phony. I've never seen him be rebellious. Not that he is above these things, but I've definitely seen a lot of his father and his mother's character in him, and I appreciate that. Now, I'm sure that a lot of that has been just because you're doing what's expected of you, but I've seen where there are those who lash out at what's expected of them and completely and totally rebel. And I'm talking about even in their before their preteen years, just because they don't want to have that glass house. They don't care. And they don't care about their father's ministry. I can say that I've definitely seen some that they care about their parents' ministry. They care about how they represent their parents. And so that's a heavy burden for somebody to understand that everything they do is a reflection of who their parents are. Now, the thing is, that's not just a PK thing. That should be, look, my last name is Hoff. It was given to me because it didn't belong to me. It was my dad's name. And so everything I do is a reflection of who my parents are. And so that should be for everybody, but it's definitely, I think, magnified for those in ministry. So I understand a little bit better.
I will say this, though, that because you had said there's some preachers' kids that don't care about their parents' ministry. And I would dare say, I would love to probe into those that don't care, because I think they do. Just the issue that comes up is our hurts, and there's all kinds of things. And I think
that you'll find that there are a lot of those. The reason that they have a different reaction is that it might be that they're seeing things differently at home than they're seeing at church. They might have a parent that.
I'm going to stop you, okay? Yeah. Because it could be that.
It could. I mean, everything's subjective. Everything's subjective.
In a lot of those places of what you're saying, like, whether it's at home or not, it's a hurt. There are hurts. There are hurts I saw my parents go through. My dad went through like 5 major church splits from the time that I was like 8 till 18. In 10 years, 5 major church splits. So people were, I mean, yeah, there's hypocrisy everywhere. There's hypocrisy. We all struggle with it. It's a defense mechanism we put in front of other people. We don't want them to see our true self. And, but more so than that, when you see people that were faithful, they are with the church, you associate them with the church. Even at home, you associate, and you see how they treat your parents, and you see how there's betrayal, there's stabbing in the back. And then you run into them. And I mean, it is a strange world when you run into those people as a preacher's kid. You're identified with your parents, and they're tiptoeing around and trying to feel you out to turn you from your parents. You say that doesn't happen. It happened to me all the time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it is like even today, if I run into somebody who like, oh yeah, your dad was a pastor, and it's like, if somebody got upset with the ministry or whatever they were upset with, they still try to feel you out because of bitterness that they had. It's a vicious cycle. It happens in relationships. It just seems magnified. And the preacher's kids, there's something I want to say, that from my perspective, and I know Alex has not talked a lot recently, but we're going to give him back the forum. But I'd love for you, Alex, to kind of give some input from where you are now, about what I'm going to say. But preacher's kids, I feel as though many of them are, when it says in Matthew about the twofold child of hell, we know that's talking about Pharisees and hypocrisy, that you are giving a false sense of religion. But in the same token, a child who is depraved, lost, without Christ, born into this world in a ministry family, and they pick up not on Christ early, they pick up on morals. And we say that's a good thing, but if they put their trust in those morals, you have that magnified as a preacher's kids because of expectations.
I understand that.
Your life is identified as morals. Now that is something that everybody that grew up in church can deal with, not just a preacher's kid. It just is magnified. That word magnified might be a key word.
Yeah, I agree, because I grew up with that. I had a great sense of morals, but it gave me also a wrong viewpoint of God. And so when I did turn 18 and could make my own decisions, I ran from God. I wanted nothing to do with it because it was all about the morals and it was all about the rules. It was no relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. And so, but I imagine it's going to be magnified as a preacher's kid.
Yeah, in order for me and a lot of preachers' kids I know to even come to Christ, or for God to deal with them personally, it's every one of us have to be lost. So we all have to lose that morality. You have to be lost to be saved.
Right.
So Christ has to get you lost to get saved. And in a preacher's kid, there are so many safety blankets and so many layers built up of protection that they naturally have, that it can be a job. It can be a lifetime of tearing that down. A little bit just seems like a little bit longer for normal kids than normal kids, but to tear down those barriers to get a preacher's kid lost before they get saved, and then you get into a whole arrogance and pride that was well, I've always been known as this. My identity is this preacher's kid. So what's going to happen if I come out and am honest?
Okay, so Alex, you're going to have to help us out with all this, because you're definitely, one that we've viewed for most of your life. Just a couple windows of the year. But why don't you share your salvation testimony and how that's been a helpful thing? Your relationship with Christ has been a helpful thing in your scenario.
Well, that's an interesting. Oh, sorry, my brain just shut off. It is too early for this. It's interesting because while I was at the Remnants Seed Summit last year, I started asking kids their testimony because I was curious, because I wanted to see if it followed up with mine. 90% of all the kids had the exact same testimony. They grew up in church and they thought they were making the right decision when they were 4 or 5, maybe 6, by quote unquote getting saved, when in reality it was just following the process. And they never realized that they needed that relationship with God and not relationship with their parents, not relationship with their pastor. When I was about 5 or 6, give or take, I made that quote unquote profession where I went up, I said what I needed to say, I did what I needed to do. And it wasn't until I was, I think, 13 at Camp Victory when I realized I am not saved. And it shook me to my core. I pulled my dad aside and I said, Dad, I never really got saved. And he was confused. He didn't really, I don't think he believed me at the time. I think he thought I was just doubting, but we've talked about it since then. And we realized that's the moment that I got saved.
Amen.
And okay, I know you have more to say. Remember where you are in this conversation, because I would love to probe into what you just said a little bit. I think it'd be a help. But when you said your father's reaction, and I love Brother Tom. I mean, this is a normal reaction.
My dad had the same one when I got saved at 26, because I said that I got saved when I was 5, so apparently, and my dad was confused when I told him I got saved at 26. He said, "No, you were saved at 5."
This is a very, very normal reaction, and there are emotions go into it of that we can't really dive into because it's
short,
case by
short.
Yeah. But when we talk about like the reaction of parents, it just gives insight, because they would say, well, there was fruit in your life. There was, whatever. I mean, that's what and it kind of can rock the doctrine of salvation to the core. Like, well, you prayed, you believed, and they will justify every way. We have seen that time and time and time again. Saw that in my life. The only person in my family that knew that was certain I was lost was my sister. And I think she's a witch, so I love my sister, but it was my sister, Laura. And when I called and told my family that I got saved, I'm in Bible college. Okay. And I said, I got saved. And she goes, man, I've been praying that you'd get saved. She's the only one. Everybody else was kind of like, oh, some people were like, okay, so you got assurance. Clarence Sexton was like, okay, so you finally got that settled. And I'm like, listen, 4 months ago, I was drunk, lying in a ditch. 6 months before that, I was like just living in the pigsty. And the only thing spiritually that happened was, my mom and dad asked me, I didn't have money to go back to college. And they said, would you consider going to Bible college? We'll pay for one semester. And it was like, that was the, option. And I'm like, hey, free school, I'm going to go. And I went to my parents. I mean, Camp Victory started to get me think about stuff that summer, but it's like, the reaction when I called everybody, I mean, it was just like, well, of course you're saved. You were just away from the Lord. And it was like, no, I never knew the Lord. And that reaction, that raw reaction, I think about that all the time with my kids. I want them to know that with a relationship with the Lord, not in semantics. We all want that for our families, for our churches. But I, I don't want them to go down the same road, even though I think some of them will. But minimizing salvation to that, especially for a kid, and not tearing apart the morality before salvation. Alex, when you've talked to these, have their parents had the same reaction that your father did? That same type of thing?
Most of the time, yeah. And as we've been saying, it's not necessarily because they're in the ministry, but it's magnified. It's you have to be saved. It doesn't make sense because you're a ministry kid. You've been in the ministry your whole life. You've been around the gospel. Why haven't you gotten saved until now? It's almost like it's sometimes portrayed as your own fault. But it's just, it's the ministry trap.
And you said you got saved at 13.
12 or 13. I don't remember the exact day, but I know the experience. I will never be able to get that out of my mind.
Yeah. So all right. Do you remember where you were when you were talking? I didn't know if you had much more to give on that as you were talking through, and I cut you off. I didn't mean to, but I felt like we should
you're completely
talk about
fine. Well, after I got saved, I continued doing. That's about when my dad went into the ministry, and I started harboring these thoughts and feelings and didn't really live for God until I started working at Camp Victory. And that's when I made the conscious decision when I was 16, I'm going to start living for God. And then after that summer ended, I just went downhill. I ran and got into some stuff that I shouldn't, got a girlfriend that wasn't the will of the Lord, and I knew it, and I chose to follow that, pursue that relationship anyway. And I ended up on my knees, and God picked me back up. That next summer that I worked at camp, God completely destroyed me that entire summer. It was like every single sermon was pointed towards me. And I will never forget the day that I truly dedicated my life back to God. It wouldn't be possible without Camp Victory, and I appreciate Camp Victory for that.
Amen.
But also the Heirloom Seed Project, which is also why I have such a burden for this, because the men and the women that helped me through these problems at the Heirloom Seed Project has such a burden that I feel like that was partially passed on to me.
Okay, so I know you're not a spokesman for the this ministry, okay, but you are a product. Can you just briefly, for like a minute, just kind of give a little plug for what this ministry is? Because a lot of people, a lot of even pastors that listen, have no idea what this is.
Are you talking about Remnant Seed or Heirloom?
The Heirloom.
Yeah.
It's designed to be a safe haven for ministry kids, a place where they can go and decompress and realize that they're, I hate to say normal kids, but
no, say it.
They can have a place where they can just be normal for a week. They don't have to think about the ministry, think about the standards that are on them, think about having to protect their parents' reputation. They can go and relax and have fun and just talk about what they go through on their daily lives, with their daily lives.
So is this like is this a week? Is it, I mean, what is it typically that you had said you've gone to it before?
It is a week retreat in Eastern Tennessee at Elijah's Harbor, which is a whole nother ministry. But we just rent out, it's a mansion is what it is. And there's a long story behind how we got it, but Elijah's Harbor rents out this mansion to people, mostly pastors actually. You can go and rent this place for the weekend and think of it like a cabin in the Smokies, but it's a mansion in Eastern Kentucky, or Eastern Tennessee, sorry.
Yeah, Heirloom Seed is it's a branch off from All Points Baptist Missions, and Brother Ryan Overfelt took it over a couple years ago. He went and started working with All Points and with his father-in-law, Brother Morrison. And it's a brain seed of a missionary's kid, and Brother Robbie Morrison, who has just a heart for not just missionaries and missionaries' children, but for ministry kids. While my kids didn't grow up with a full-time minister father, Brother Robbie's always been a blessing, encouragement to my kids, because they did grow up with a dad who was in the ministry, because I was doing drug addictions and jail ministry. And Brother Robbie always treated them with man, I love that dude.
Well, full-time or not, ministry kids
right, it affects kids. I mean, look, my kids still have some bitterness about choices that I made, and I did sacrifice my kids a few times on the altar of ministry, and I wish I could go back and change those things. I don't know how that feels. I just know, for them, but I know that it's real, and it's something that's hard for them to let go of.
Bitterness is a huge thing that not just ministry kids, but everyone has to deal with. And that's another very common theme that we can talk about for forever. The bitterness that these kids, even to their adulthood lives, take for and just harbor against their parents.
So, Alex, this has been good. This has been very productive. I think, the start of something very good, what you're doing. I would encourage you to get those out there as soon as you can. But your podcast is called The Remnants Seed. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The Remnants Seed. I'm thinking about doing a rebranding because that's a mouthful, but I'm praying about it right now.
RSP.
RSP.
Spell out what it means to me.
RSPCPTT.
It's another Office reference. Sorry, Alex.
So,
oh, you're fine. I've seen a few episodes, but I need to watch
Remnant Seed, and that's not derogatory in our woke society. We're not saying that people are not part of the Remnant Seed, and it's not magnifying or lifting up preachers' kids. There is a serious problem here. And for someone to walk away and to say, preachers' kids, they're just normal kids, they just want attention, this is absolutely not it. There are, from the worldly, I'll use worldly terms, there are some psychological issues that come from being a preacher's kid, whether the ministry was good to you or whether the ministry was bad to you, and however you process that. I want to give a little bit of an encouragement. If there are any preachers' kids that are watching or listening, any preachers' kids that maybe are younger, and you would say, I've worked through all these things, I've gone to these ministries, and they are such a help to me. I want to say this, and I don't want to be discouraging whatsoever. I mean this with all encouragement, but it may take you a life or a good chunk of your life for God to work out the issues from when you were a kid. Just go with it. Just follow a step at a time, and not to, what about Bob this, but baby steps. Baby steps. And I know that there's a pressure to need to charge hell and conquer the world with a squirt gun, whatever, however you want to say it. you want to be the DL Moody because you've seen that's what's been put into you. And you may feel like, well, if I take these baby steps to get right, or these baby steps to get healthy, mentally, physically, spiritually healthy, then I'm not going to see God work. That's absolutely not the case. In those baby step times, that's when you'll really see, you will look back and you'll say, man, God really worked in these different places, and you won't be able to take the credit. I would encourage you, baby steps. Be okay with it taking a life.
Well, I mean, we're all in the middle of our own sanctification process, and whether you're a former addict, whether you're whatever your former life was, whatever it was, whether you're a PK or you've never graced the doors of church until you got saved, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing for each and every one of us. The answer is Christ. If we'll just focus on him, no matter what the situation, no matter what the background, if you'll just focus on him, let him get you through whatever it is that you've got to get through, because he's the only answer. I don't care who you are and what you've done. He's the only answer.
All right, Alex, I appreciate you joining us today, and I look forward to you putting some out.
Absolutely.
I know that you interviewed me, and not that I don't want to hear that interview. My goodness.
Me either.
We talked about something that we've not really talked about on the podcast, and just personal struggles. So it's a kind of a platform to open up, and I was with my nephew. So, but I do look forward to seeing and hearing what God is going to do with this, and I hope you get those out. You said Spotify. I hope I don't know if they're on other platforms or not, but is there anything else you'd like to say before we dismiss? I see those hands. No.
Just thank you for the opportunity. I'm very blessed for being able to do this. I've been listening to this podcast for about 1.5 years now, so thank you for the opportunity.
Well, we're glad that you could come, and I do apologize that you've maybe that's stunted your growth and growing out of the preacher's kid.
I blame little Jerry, so it's not my fault. So.
Yeah, I blame me too.
Hey, love you, Alex. Love you, Jared. Well, until next time.
Yep. Love you guys. If you'd like to listen, if you'd like to leave comments, feedback, if you'd like to know more information, anything like that, you can email us at the restructuredpodcast@gmail.com. We also have a Twitter handle,
the Restructured PC, and then we're on Facebook.
And we're on Facebook, the Restructured Podcast.
No, we do not have an Instagram account because I just don't have time. Okay.
And I don't know what's going on. So,
all right.
But I will get some of your message. So, love you guys.
Later.